We are studying A Journey to the West. Now, everyone should try to think of His Holiness every day and pray to His Holiness. At the same time, imagine traveling abroad with Guru, listening to the Dharma together in the presence of the Guru. If you have such thoughts, it may have some significance. Although for each session, we don't finish it in one class. The content here is truly very interesting. The words His Holiness spoke back then, I was a witness, and His Holiness indeed did not need to prepare lessons. Even at some venues after arriving, he would just give us a teaching on this topic. There wasn't the kind of advanced preparation where various topics are provided for His Holiness to prepare. It wasn't like that. He spoke spontaneously on the spot, yet his spontaneous teachings later proved to accord with history and with practice. This is very difficult to achieve. His Holiness was 60 years old when he went there. Actually, in His Holiness's life, it was different from many of us Dharma friends. Many of us, from the time we ordained, say at 20 or 30 years old, had opportunities for study and reflection for 20 or 30 years. His Holiness studied in Sirtha for 6 years, and upon returning, the 10 years of turmoil began. Then, for 20 years, there was absolutely no Buddhist study or practice whatsoever. Unlike us now, we practice every day. If it were us at that time, perhaps having about 10 years of study at the beginning, then being confined for 20 years in the middle, and finally in the 1980s, having a slight recovery, to then be able to recall these teachings, I think this would be very difficult for an ordinary person to do. So His Holiness's wisdom is indeed, after studying this, everyone should understand, oh, although I never met His Holiness was such an extraordinary person. Many people may feel this. This is a priceless treasure. All teachings are here. So this time, when we usually explain these tantric teachings, some of you may not necessarily understand. So this time, not only have I organized the Tibetan text, but have also translated it completely. With the translation, the many principles within are still very important for those of us studying Tantra, are still very important. So I'm also providing this to everyone this time. Time has passed quite quickly. Now, Ogyen Rinpoche, yesterday we mentioned there were many Vidyadharas. Actually, the teachings of these Vidyadharas, when we received the empowerment of Nyingtig Yabji, many of the commentaries in Vima Nyingtig and these heart essence teachings include their commentaries. These should exist. So many of us should have received the empowerments and oral transmissions of these teachings. Now, Ogyen Rinpoche Padmasambhava has never entered parinirvana and lives in the southwestern direction in Chamaradvipa, which we often call the Rakshasa continent. He rules over all the Rakshasa kingdoms there, so he achieved the Great Rainbow Body. This will also be mentioned later. Vimalamitra remains at Mount Wutai in China without abandoning his fleshly body, and even now still resides there. Every 100 years, a real emanation of him appears in Tibetan areas, and in ordinary times, many of his emanations continuously appear. Previously, in Acho Lama's biography or somewhere, it was said that sometimes the letter A appears on the tip of his nose, and he is also an emanation of Vimalamitra. There are such accounts. In some other books, it is said that Peno Rinpoche was also an emanation of Vimalamitra. Previously, Yikog Lama was also an emanation of Vimalamitra, and Yangtang Tulku, in his biography it says that his previous life was also an emanation of Vimalamitra. In Tibetan areas, there are indeed many emanations of Vimalamitra. There is one main emanation every 100 years, with many smaller emanations in between, just joking. Other emanations may also appear. His Holiness said, in 1987, along with tens of thousands of Tibetans, I made a pilgrimage to Mount Wutai and paid homage to Vimalamitra. At that time, some people in the sky saw Vimalamitra and Manjushri, because at that time the purpose was, in 1986, His Holiness said that in his pure vision, Vimalamitra and Manjushri invited him to Mount Wutai. When we arrived there at that time, there were various experiences. Some people said, "Ah, Master, above your head, Vimalamitra is there." A Chinese monk at that time told His Holiness that Vimalamitra was above, and King Geza was also there. Everyone was looking, not knowing. Perhaps some people saw it. Some things were truly quite extraordinary. There were some monks and patients. Anyway, one afternoon, all the people rushed out. They said at the turn below Pusading there was a patient, and they didn't know who spread the word that he was Vimalamitra, and everyone was saying so. But we don't know if he was an emanation. Anyway, at that time there were various situations. Perhaps in pure vision some people truly saw Vimalamitra. There are such accounts. There were also people who saw lions, Manjushri's mount, and people who saw rainbows. Rainbows are one of Manjushri's 10 signs. Some people saw quite special birds or people, such magnificent images and so forth, seeing incredibly auspicious signs. Even today many people have seen such auspicious signs. So generally speaking, when we make a pilgrimage to Mount Wutai, we often see Vimalamitra. When we went there, our volunteers, didn't we go in 2017? When we went to see Vimalamitra, but the situation at that time was very tense. At 4 or 5 in the morning, we went to Vajra cave to make aspirations. At that time, I gave them an oral transmission of the preliminary practices of Jetsun Dzogchen. I didn't see Vimalamitra, but at Qingliang temple, an old monk saw me. He wouldn't let me finish reciting the aspiration of Samantabhadra. Leave now, leave now. So I had no choice but to leave. Originally, this may have become a good auspicious sign. Originally, I thought it's already been 30 years, it's enough, it's finished. I wanted to dedicate all the merit accumulated before and then go into retreat myself. But that old monk pushed me away and wouldn't let me recite the aspiration of Samantabhadra. I didn't finish it. As for the others, at that time, including the chant leader, he was quite persistent and finished reciting it himself. Some people finished it, but I didn't. But later I thought I should still thank the old monk. Otherwise, the auspicious connection for teaching later might not have existed. At that time I truly thought to dedicate properly and after that go into retreat, including here at the victorious Mara subduing land of Larungar. I wanted to temporarily conclude things. I had this thought. But at that time the old monk didn't let me dedicate, so without the dedication I temporarily left. But I don't know if he was an emanation of Vimalamitra. Apart from that, we didn't see anything else. In a later time, Vimalamitra emanated an illusory body from his primordial wisdom and came to Tibetan areas, where he bestowed upon Jetsun Senge Wangchuk his entire empowerments, guidance, and pith instructions. Once when Jetsun Senge Wangchuk was making a tsok offering among 100,000 dakinis, his physical body dissolved into a light sphere. Then all the dakinis began to pray to him, and he bestowed upon them the great Jetsun's heart essence, which His Holiness later in Napa Valley taught as the 3 sections of pith instructions. He entrusted this to them. The emanation of Jetsun Senge Wangchuk, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, later established it in writing through recollection. This is very interesting. Below we will in the 4th stop. Let me see, 1st stop, 2nd stop, 3rd stop, it should be the 4th stop in that section when teaching the great Jetsun Dzogchen. That history should be there. If you want to look at it in advance, you can. Now, many people have received the Manjushri Dzogchen and Nyingtik Yabshi empowerments. These empowerments have already been received. Very good. Thus, great Dzogchen masters appeared in the world one after another. As mentioned above, there also emerged a great number of practitioners who followed them to practice Dzogchen. For example, at Kathok Monastery in our Kham region, it is well known that 100,000 practitioners accomplished rainbow body in the same period of time. Now some people say 100,000 is impossible. The entire Tibetan population now is only about 6 million. So 100,000 when the human population was so small at that time. Some people also analyze it this way, but indeed many historical records say this. It is recorded in the histories, including Kathok Monastery's own monastic history also records this, and there are famous ones. For instance, there is one called the Great Gazer History of Buddhism, which also has this in its Buddhist history. Not only that, but also those who transformed into rainbow light or accomplished rainbow body are inconceivable. They keep emerging continuously. There are also many. His Holiness said, for instance, there was an old layman from Yidlong in Deje named Sogyal, who also accomplished rainbow body. His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche's The Nyingma School of Tibetan Buddhism also records this. This should have been around 1955 at a place called Mani Kango in Dege. At that time, I remember in the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, it was just briefly mentioned. This rainbow body achiever named Sonam Namgyal, whose short name was Sogyal, who accomplished rainbow body. The Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism just briefly mentioned it, but actually His Holiness mentioned this in other teachings. His Holiness also, when he went to Shichu, happened to be there and also saw some of his remaining relics. He also said this. Also, the previous life of the second Dudjom Rinpoche, that is, the first Dudjom Rinpoche, was there. At the same time, there appeared 13 rainbow body achievers. That is our present-day Larung. Larung is the sacred place of the first Dudjom Rinpoche. And here these 13 rainbow body achievers. Many of their names are in Dudjom Rinpoche's autobiography, which I previously translated, where some names of rainbow body achievers were also mentioned. Also, at our monastery, Domang Monastery, previously in the history written by Depa Khenpo and others at Domang Monastery, where the current retreat center is, there were also 16 rainbow body achievers. This is also mentioned in an earlier history, not something someone wrote recently. So in monasteries across Tibetan areas, there have been many who accomplished rainbow body, including practitioners whose bodies shrank to a small size. They continue to appear right up until now. I have included some of this in my brief account of rainbow body achievement in Secret Mantra, which I also used. Now, many of our lineage disciples at the time of death, their bodies also transform into light, shrinking and manifesting many other auspicious signs. They appeared in the past and continue to appear now. In short, among practitioners who practice Dzogchen, about 60% of Dzogchen practitioners have achieved apparent signs of spiritual attainment. His Holiness said about 60% at that time. Among those practicing Dzogchen, indeed, what we know now, many who previously received guidance and pith instructions from His Holiness, no matter what, when they finally departed, more or less had many such auspicious signs. Roughly speaking, most people should have them, so 60%. His Holiness also said 60%. It should be most people. For instance, we've heard that if 10 people pass away at the academy, perhaps 6 people truly have different auspicious signs. Because at our academy, before His Holiness departed, some also passed away, and after His Holiness departed, many people, when they finally passed away, indeed had quite many different auspicious signs. The above was to help everyone develop true faith in the great perfection. I briefly explained a bit of history. Whether a teaching is truly pure or not depends on whether practitioners who actually practice this teaching manifest signs of realization. This is truly important. If there are no signs at all, perhaps they have no realization. Of course, some may not manifest signs in this very life. Up until today, accomplished practitioners keep emerging in the Nyingma school, the lineage of Vidyadharas. This is the most powerful evidence to show that the great perfection is a genuine and pure practice. Anyway, from ancient times to the present, people who truly practice Dzogchen continuously achieve accomplishment. Regarding this point, we also, generally those who receive good guidance, who have faith in the Guru and the teachings, their practice realization, including their view of birth, aging, sickness and death, are all completely different. The great perfection indeed has especially powerful blessings. This we can see at a glance. Then next we'll discuss the extraordinary attributes of the great perfection. Then you may ask, in what approach can we learn the teachings of the great perfection? His Holiness said, if you want to extensively study it, you can refer to the 11 topics of Dzogchen. In Omniscient Longchenpa's Treasury of Word and Meaning, the 10 topics are explained. During our itinerary in France, His Holiness specifically taught these 10 topics, so if you want to understand in advance, you can also take a look. I think His Holiness finished teaching it in one breath that day. Especially wonderful, these 10 topics. Because this audio is still available now, it's amazing, as if reciting them every day, just like that. To summarize their key points, the core is the practice of Trekcho, which reveals the view of primordial purity, and the practice of Togal, which brings the realization of spontaneous presence. These are the practices of Dzogchen, mainly these. The so-called practice of trekchö actually refers to ascertaining the view that all phenomena are empty in nature. All schools in this regard, such as the Sakya, Nyingma, Kagyu, Gelug, and so forth, and also the Jonang school, His Holiness didn't mention it here, but it's included in and so forth, basically all have their own pith instructions for practice. They all teach emptiness. For example, in the Sama tradition, the supreme medicinal nectar by Lama Tsongkhapa is identical to the fundamental teachings of the Nyingma's Great Perfection from its beginning to the end. In the Great Perfection, the dialogue between Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyal and the dialogue in Supreme Medicinal Nectar are completely identical. Not only that, but many practitioners in the lineage of Tsongkhapa, such as Chankyar Ronpa Dorje, Mifam Rinpoche, specifically wrote a commentary on Chankyar's songs. I still very much want to translate it, but if I translate it, it seems his linguistic expressions are not what we usually use, somewhat difficult to express. Some of his, however, these songs are very famous. Mifam Rinpoche personally wrote this commentary. Everyone knows Chankyar Rinpoche. He was very accomplished. He also accomplished spiritual attainment by practicing the Great Perfection. That's the first one. Second, the practice of Tögal. Comparatively, the practice of Tögal is a unique practice that no other school has, including in Tibetan Buddhism. The Great Perfection has 4 types of uncommon teachings. What are these 4 types? Explained below. Jampal Shenyan divided the 6,400,000 stanzas of Dzogchen into 3 classes: the outer category of mind, the inner category of space, and the secret category of pith instructions. Sri Singha further classified the secret category of pith instruction into 4 cycles: outer, inner, secret, and quintessential secret. Except for the innermost Nyingtik teachings, none of the other Great Perfection doctrines teaches the practice of Tögal. So, Tögal practice, you see, Dzogchen is also divided into so many categories, including mind class, space class, and pith instruction class. Only the pith instruction class has it. Moreover, not all of the pith instruction class has it. The pith instruction class is further divided into 4 types, and only in the final quintessential secret pith instruction class is there the practice of Tögal. So our practice of Tögal does not exist in other practices of Tibetan Buddhism. Then, in terms of actual practice, Trekchö and Tögal are the 2 core training paths, which are clearly taught in the Nyingtig Yabji. Pema Nyingtig and Vima Nyingtig, these 2 heart essence teachings flourished in the world. Initially, the Nyingtig teachings were brought into this world and transmitted in the land of Tibet by Padmasambhava and Vimalamitra. These are our many heart essence teachings now, transmitted by Padmasambhava and Vimalamitra. Therefore, these 2 teachings are called Mother Nyingtig. Previously, when we taught Nyingtig Yabzi, I also told everyone about this. Afterward, omniscient Longchenpa composed the Lama Yangtig, a commentary and offspring of the Vaima Nyingtig, the Khandro Yangtig, a commentary and offspring of the Khandro Nyingtig, as well as a condensation of the important pith instructions of the 2 Mother Nyingtig texts, known as Zabmo Yangtig, Profound Quintessence. Then the 2 Mother Nyingtig and their 2 commentaries known as the Child Nyingtig are collectively called Nyingtig Yabzi, 4 sections of the heart essence. We often speak of the Nyingtig Yabzi empowerment, but actually there are 5 Nyingtig. There's also the synthesis of these 2 pith instructions, but why don't we call it 5 Nyingtig? Because actually within the Nyingtig Yabzi it's already included. It's just that if we were to condense all of the Nyingtig Yabzi, it would be in this Zabmo Yangtig. When we receive the empowerment, there's quite a lot of empowerment content. Actually, it's the content of Zabmo Yangtig. Apart from the Nyingtig Yabzi, there's nothing else. So why don't we make it 5 Nyingtig? The reason is right here. All training techniques in Buddhism can be acquired through 2 ways of transmission: explanatory transmission and oral transmission. Oral transmission means to transmit teachings that are classified as the secret cycle, or more advanced teachings, to only a small number of fortunate disciples. What is secret cycle or above? Is there a secret class? What was just mentioned? Yes, there is. Outer, inner, and secret class or above. The secret class and quintessential secret class, this is called oral transmission. The explanatory transmission refers to the case in which, when the attendees are all suitable Dharma vessels, the teaching can be given to a large audience. Since the time of Longchen Rabjam, that is before omniscient Longchenpa, great masters only transmitted the great perfection person to person in the manner of oral transmission, rather than to a larger audience. Many were one-on-one, just like Zen Buddhism at the beginning, one-on-one, all the way to the sixth patriarch. Then, at the time of the sixth patriarch, it blossomed into 5 branches and began to spread widely. The same way, after omniscient Longchenpa, because there were more and more disciples, if the disciples are suitable Dharma vessels and the disciples become Dharma vessels, and the master is an accomplished one, the master can impart Dzogchen teachings to hundreds of thousands of disciples at once. Nowadays, in Tibetan areas, many realized lamas give teachings to large audiences. Likewise, in India and other places it's the same, such as His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, Penor Rinpoche, and so forth. They also bestowed empowerments in many gatherings. They also often transmit in different gatherings. Rinchen Terdso, what we call the Treasury of Precious Termas, Rinchen Terdso and Nyingtik Yabsi. In India it's like this, and in Tibetan areas it's like this too. Some people may question, why do they transmit so publicly? This is because there were only very few qualified disciples in the past, but now there are a great number of people who are suitable Dharma vessels. So now later it's spread more and more widely. Some people might doubt this. His Holiness said, according to the view of inner Buddhist teachings, clearly it is said that before the appearance of Buddha Maitreya, as time passes, the world systems and time degenerate to become more chaotic, and the karma and afflictive emotions of sentient beings become stronger and stronger, and sentient beings' fortune gets worse and worse, rather than improve. Why is it that now the noble Dharma can be spread widely? Why is the Dharma that is suitable for beings becoming more sublime? This is a question at this point. His Holiness also has a relatively special answer. Why can we now widely transmit tantric teachings and the teachings of Dzogchen? The reason it's getting more and more profound is this. According to the view of the general tantras, as afflictive emotions of sentient beings become stronger, the Dharma must become more profound. Because when afflictions are many, only powerful Buddhism can possibly counteract them. When the Dharma gets more profound, it indicates that the afflictive emotions of sentient beings are becoming stronger. When sentient beings are carried away by distractions unceasingly, only Dharma that strikes the point will be effective. Generally speaking, Kriya Tantra or Action Tantra is most popular when the lifespan of humans is limitless. It is the lowest view among all Tantras. Then when the lifespan of humans decreases to 80,000 years, Charya Tantra or Conduct Tantra blossoms vigorously. When humans' lifespan shrinks to 30,000 years, Yoga Tantra is most prevalent. Afterward, when the 5 aspects of degeneration and strife become rampant, just like us now, with the 5 degenerations rampant, when afflictions are especially strong, the highest Yoga Tantra flourishes. So it's a bit different from the Sutra teachings. With Sutra teachings, it seems that later on they increasingly become formalistic. It can't be like this. But when sentient beings' merit is good, the Tantra doesn't need to be that profound. Then, as time becomes more and more degenerate, the teachings of Dzogchen become more and more suitable. The more degenerate the time is, the more profound the Tantra there is to fit the need of sentient beings. As the Kalpa becomes more and more degenerate, finally when human lifespan lessens to only 10 years, the great perfection will become more popular than ever. At that time, a Dakini named Dakini Palzin will teach the great perfection. This will also be mentioned again later. At that time, how she obtained it. And in the 17 great tantras, it's also explained this way, and this principle will be explained later. So perhaps many of us Dharma friends previously didn't know why Dzogchen is the most profound. Anyone who sees, hears, remembers, or comes into contact with this teaching will be liberated. Finally, when Dakini Palzin teaches the supreme secret Dharma of Dzogchen, sentient beings who see, hear, or come into contact with it will all be liberated. So now, in these degenerate times for sentient beings, just as in His Holiness's loyal advice, points of light for the mind, other teachings are like stars. It's difficult to dispel darkness. But the brilliant sun of the supreme great perfection that can dispel the darkness in sentient beings' mind streams. Meanwhile, any other doctrines would become less and less effective as the time degenerates. As Ju Mipham Rinpoche said, When the world is enveloped in the darkness of degeneration and decline, with wrong views, degenerate sentient beings, and rampant afflictions increasingly enveloping everything like darkness, the enlightened activities of Padmasambhava will become as brilliant as the moon, able to illuminate the entire world. The enlightened activities of Padmasambhava will become as brilliant as the moon. Good. We'll stop here for today.
Bandara Banma Sodargye